Welcome to the Care Right podcast, your go-to resource for all things elder care. Guiding us through this journey is Annalee Kruger, the founder of Care Right Incorporated, and she has been steadfastly supporting families across the United States. Each episode brings you expert insights, innovative strategies, and practical advice, ensuring that you're well equipped to provide the best possible care for your loved ones. Expect to gain valuable knowledge, learn from real-life stories, and get inspired to take action in your own caregiving journey. So buckle up as we dive into an in-depth discussion of elder care planning and together embrace the journey of caring for aging loved ones on the Care Right podcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm Annalee Kruger, the owner of Care Right Incorporated. Welcome to the Caregiver Crisis Podcast. I wanted to share what Care Right does in case we have some new listeners today. Care Right is a nationwide family consultancy for families who are taking care of aging loved ones or are starting to see the writing on the wall with their aging parents that things are probably not going as well as you had hoped or as well as you thought. Red flags that things are not going well with our parents: falls, weight loss, hospitalizations, infections, disease progression like Parkinson's disease and the subsequent falls that tend to come with Parkinson's, dementia progression where mom or dad are getting more confused, you're worried that they are taking their medications properly or that they're forgetting doctor's appointments, or even worse, driving or getting out of their house, and you're concerned about their safety and their well-being. Care Right works with families all across the country. We've been virtual since 2011, putting aging plans in place so that you have the peace of mind that how to interview home care companies, when to introduce home care into the plan for your aging parents. What are the pros and cons of aging in place at home? What are considerations of when is it time to make that move into a care community? Our team does all of the research that families need so that they can make informed decisions about what are their care options. And we help our families understand like how to pay for care. Medicare does not pay for care. And Medicare and Medicaid are not the same program. So many of our families come to us they're overwhelmed, they're in crisis, and they aren't aware or understanding of what the differences are in levels of care, or what if mom needs one level of care and dad needs a different level of care, and what if we spent all of our money on home care and now that's not working anymore and they need to move into a care community. What are our options? So all of that kind of aging, family caregiving, dementia progression, all that navigating healthcare industry, that's Care Right's expertise. When I built the business in 2011, I really had this romantic notion that I would be able to reach families proactively and say, hey, let's start putting a plan in place for the what-whens of aging. But the reality is 92% of our families come to us in crisis, and things are pretty messy when they come to us with family dynamics and those kinds of things. So part of the Caregiver Crisis podcasts I'm always looking for guests that are just doing super cool things, doing amazing world and life-changing things for families or whoever it is that they work with. So today, I am really excited to introduce Blair Kaplan Venables, and she is doing super cool things. We met in November of last year and really connected pretty much right away because you're on a mission and you are unstoppable. So I wanted to introduce you, or I wanted to have you introduce yourself, share your story, and let's just get started.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is amazing. And what you're doing is such important work. I love how innovative you are. And I just also want to thank you for giving me the space to share my story and my mission, because of people like you, I'm able to grow. So who the heck am I? My name is Blair Kaplan Venables. I'm an expert in social media marketing and the CEO of Blair Kaplan Communications, a British Columbia, Canada-based PR agency. I have 15 years of experience, and I've worked with companies in the global wellness, entertainment, fashion, lifestyle brands. I created the social media empowerment pillars, and I help my customers grow their followers into the tens of thousands, win marketing awards, and more. I've been listed on a couple lists as a top 10 conscious leaders to watch, or a top 10 social media expert to watch. It's been super cool. I've spoken on stages around the world, screens around the world. I've been featured in Forbes, CBC, Radio, Entrepreneur, Thrive Global. The most exciting thing is that this summer of 2023, a new show that will be airing on Amazon Prime called My Story will showcase my life story, which is exciting. Yeah, and I'm the founder of something called the Global Resilience Project, and it's a community where users and people and everyone in the world who wants to can share their stories of overcoming life's most difficult moments.
Tell me about, so when we met in November, you shared your story, and it just tugged at my heart, and that's what's prompted us to continue this relationship and get on the podcast and share your story. So I know it's a painful one, but if you can share your story and your why and what you're doing with your resilience program, that'd be awesome.
And it's so interesting because where I met you, you were speaking about like aging parents. And for those of you who are not watching this or who are watching this, believe it or not, I'm in my 30s. I'm young, but I was just like, oh, my parents are dead, so I don't need to go to this. It was just like a really weird thing like that. And so I'm going to tell you my story, and it's heavy. It's going to be kind of high level because we don't have like eons of time. But growing up, I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And I was very close with my father. My father was a diamond dealer and a gemologist. Unfortunately, in the 80s, someone showed him what cocaine was. His business was extremely successful, and he was looking for how to work longer hours. And that was the solution for him at the time. And unfortunately, it kicked off active addiction. And when I was 7 years old, my father sold his business because he didn't want to ruin his reputation. And he divorced my mother, left our family. And his addiction was very bad. Like he went from, not being able to afford or, use cocaine to injecting drugs to smoking crack. And that was a 40+ year battle. But as a little girl, I thought he just stopped loving me. He was in and out of my life, right? Like, Blair, I'll come to your birthday party, and then he wouldn't show up. I'd wait by the door for him, and he just never showed up. And same thing, like waiting for him for family time at the door, and he'd call and be like, I'm running late, and not showing up. And so I had a lot of anger towards him and a lot of trust issues and mental health struggles. And, growing up was challenging. And fast forward to my 20s, I went to something called the Landmark Forum. I went because it was, for me, a free trip to Vancouver, British Columbia. And if you've ever been, you'll understand. And I was in my early 20s. I was like, oh, free trip, like perfect. And something in this personal development forum gave me the tools that allowed me to forgive my dad and just like accept him for who he is. And I remember having the most beautiful conversation with him. The first part of the conversation was like in a grocery store at a payphone. Like it was very like crying and messy. And then we continued it later in the hotel room. And I was like, I'll accept whatever you can give me, whether it's a text message once a week or a phone call. And from that moment on, he began to drive across Canada to visit me a few times a year and texting me and calling me. We got to have a second chance. We got to develop this really beautiful relationship. I started to actually understand his struggle with addiction. I didn't know that. I didn't know he had addiction problems. I didn't understand addiction. And I started to learn that my dad was a really good man. He was just sick. And as a little kid, I wish someone would have said to me, Blair, like, your dad loves you no matter what. He's just not well. Because I thought he stopped loving me. And that was never the case. And so I got a second chance. My dad got to walk me down the aisle, and he was in my life. He, came to visit me in various places I lived. But at the end of 2018, we learned he was terminally ill with COPD and lung cancer. And I felt like the rug was being pulled from beneath my feet. I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know what to do. I cut out drinking to help manage my anxiety and depression. And I was scared I was going down a bad path, like a similar path to my dad. So I made some life choices. And I was also starting to share our story of his addiction, my forgiveness, and our resilience. And our story was helping people. Hey, Blair, thanks for meeting me for coffee and sharing your story. I actually went and got a therapist because I want to fix things with my mom. Hey, Blair, your story inspired me to fix things with my dad before he dies. I'm going to go visit him in Ontario. And I said, Dad, like we have a really powerful story. Why don't we write a book? We'll gather stories of resilience from around the world, and we'll bookend it with your story and my story. So when you're no longer here, we have a legacy piece that can keep helping people.
Yep.
And so we began March 2019, the Global Resilience Project. It started off as the I Am Resilient Project, but then I manifested I believe in manifestation, and a lot of hard stuff happened to me. So just a high level recap of what happened from that moment of starting the project until now. My grandfather, who was like my father, passed away. On the way home from his funeral, my husband and I got in a car accident, and I got a concussion, like a brain injury. Didn't have a chance to recover because of work stuff. My husband had a heart attack and quadruple bypass surgery. So my husband almost died. We struggled with fertility a year after, and then COVID. But like, to me, COVID was nothing compared to like everything else.
Right. Yeah.
And then, so a year after his heart attack, we actually found out we were pregnant naturally, which we were told it couldn't happen. But we ended up having a miscarriage. And then 3 weeks later, my father-in-law suddenly died after a 3-week battle with cancer. And Dave was like the dad I never had. Like, we were planning a father-daughter kayak trip. So it was like I was being robbed of 2 dads. And then 3 months later, my 62-year-old mother died suddenly after a 3-week battle with cancer. My world was upside down. And then not even a year after my mom died, so within 360 days, my dad died. So I literally have embodied resilience. I've remained sober, and, 3.5 years later, I was able to finally publish the first Global Resilience Project book. But we're going to continue publishing books. We created a podcast. We have an online, community, social media. I believe that everyone has a story, and that every story deserves to be told. And, my life being 37, I thought by now I'd be a wine drinking soccer mom. I didn't think I'd be a sober, childless bird watcher, but here we are. And I'm here in this lifetime to not have children. I'm not doing that. I'm going down a different road, and I'm turning my pain into purpose to help the world be more resilient.
I don't even know what to say. I'm just totally blown away. Like, any one of those is huge, but you had all of that happen in such a short amount of time and maintained your sobriety. Like, you are on such a path that's why when I heard your story, as gut wrenching as it is, and I'm sure it doesn't get easier sharing it, like, right?
Yeah,
there's still like this, it makes you catch your breath when you have to be, and then this happened, and then this happened, but when I heard your story, and thank you for sharing that with me when we first met, I'm like, okay, we've got to get you on this podcast. You have to share your story with my audience too, because everybody that's listening to this, or most people who are listening to this, probably has some sort of something that happened to them that they've had to like dig deep and figure out, how do we manage this? So wow. So tell us more, like, where are you going with this?
Okay. So first of all, I think something that's really important is we should define what resilience is.
Yeah.
Because I used to think it was like bouncing back from a challenging time. I pictured like a rubber band stretching on your fingers, and when you let go, it snaps back. But I had this epiphany during like a deep healing session where you're never the same after going through a challenge. So you're never going back, you're only going forward. In fact, you're bouncing forward. So resilience is the ability to bounce forward after a difficult time, after a challenging time. It's bouncing forward because you're never going to be the same. So I also learned that everyone has a resilience muscle. Some of us never have to use it, or they don't have to use it till they're like, older in life. I've had to use it my entire life. Like, I have a little sister, who's, was 3 years old or 3.5 when my dad left. I all of a sudden became an adult child at 7 with a single mom who worked all the time. So I had a lot of responsibility. I had to be very resilient without knowing it. But there are things that you can do to strengthen your resilience muscle. And that we all have this ability to do things so that when life is hard, we're able to move through it better, faster, stronger, and not numb it out. And so I learned that we all have this muscle. We all have this ability to be resilient. Some of us are in survival mode. Like I was in survival mode for the last 3 years, and I'm just coming out of deep grief. Like I was in a grief vortex. My sister says, Blair, you get the gold medal of the grief Olympics. I'm like, it's the first time I get a gold medal. Actually, I think in the science fair once I got maybe a gold medal. No, it was bronze. I'm not a gold medal kid. I'm a runner up, you know? And so, but you know, I think like we all have the ability to get through the hard stuff. And you have a choice. Like, do you want to numb it out and just like face plant into a pile of dirt and like hope the world, you know, just disappears? Or are you going to face your challenges and choose to move on and move through and do what you need to do moment by moment to get through it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So where am I going with this? So the project originally started just as a book to like honor my dad. But then obviously my father-in-law died, the baby, miscarriage, like other stuff happened. I dealt with anti-Semitism and had to leave a big client. I had a severe burn from like my coffee press exploding, and I was in the ER in and out during COVID because I had burns on my chest and my arm and my face. I'll never use a Bodum again. And, you know, lots of stuff has happened, and like, I still show up, and I show up in whatever capacity I can. And I think there's a couple things there, and it's because I've designed a life that I love. And I still love my life. Like, obviously I'd like my parents to be here and Dave, and like, I would have loved to have kids, but these aren't the cards I was dealt. And I really do believe after going through something, in hindsight, I can always see the silver lining. And I like to share my stories from a place of a scar, not an open wound. But my goal is to empower 88 million people by August 2025, which is when I turn 40. And, you know, I want to give people the opportunity to share their stories for the first time, or the 100th time, to read stories like, oh my God, I'm going through something really challenging. XYZ is happening. And they know about the community. They come to the community and they can find stories of other people just like them going through something similar. And they might find that advice on how to navigate it, how to end that terrible chapter. So I want this legacy to be a community where people can come and heal.
I love that. I love that. Not only just what life throws our way personally with parents and stuff like that, but just and family dynamics and stuff like that, but just life in general, like all the pandemic stuff and all the stuff that happened around that time. None of it was easy.
No.
Right.
The pandemic to me was the easiest part, except for when like my husband could not see his dad until like moments before he died. My husband wasn't allowed in. That was heartbreaking. Our mom, like we would have had more time with our mom. We were lucky to be able to be with our mom, but like because of COVID, we got robbed of all this time. Right. But like also like the pandemic and not traveling and having to stay home. Like I lived in a beautiful mountain town in British Columbia, and I live in a different town that is also beautiful. But like I would just like hike around and do my work, and it was fine for me. To me, the pandemic was nothing compared to my husband almost dying, but then all the parents died. So
right. You know, and for those of us that have, you know, that have aging parents who were hospitalized or institutionalized, we weren't allowed in. We weren't deemed essential. Even as a professional patient advocate, we weren't deemed. So like, I love what you're doing. Everybody does have a story, and it does need to be heard. So, what you're doing is so cool. I'm so happy that we met. Is it, in closing, is there anything else that you'd like listeners to know, or kind of what would be some next steps if they wanted to learn more?
So a couple things. One, if you're like, Blair, I want to learn more, I want to read these stories, you can go to theglobalresilienceproject.com. On our website, we also have a link to our podcast, Radical Resilience. You could submit your story to be shared online. Like it's free to be, I believe every story deserves to get told, and every story will be shared on our website. We're also going to be opening applications for our second book. So if you're interested and you would like to be published in the book, there's going to be an opportunity there. There will be a nominal fee. But I just want people to know that like sharing your story is a way to healing. You don't have to publicly share it. It can be with a therapist or in a journal, but part of the way to heal is by processing, and by processing, it's by sharing your story, and something in your story might help someone else get through their hard time. Because that's what's happening with me, is I'm sharing my story and it's helping other people, whether it's my miscarriage or sobriety or parents passing away or cancer. You know, like when my parents had two of my parents had cancer, all three of my parents had cancer. Oh my gosh, that's so much cancer. So like my dad lived with addiction. Like I've navigated a lot, and because I'm sharing, I'm able to help people. So I just want to invite you to share your story, whether it's with our community or a therapist or getting a notebook or talking to yourself in the mirror. And if you know someone that you think this community can benefit, please share the word, share the love. The Global Resilience Project book is available on Amazon around the world. And I'm sure distribution is going to grow, especially with us being on Amazon Prime in the summer. Oh, so exciting.
Yeah, that is exciting.
And I don't know where this is going to go. It's a project, and I'm going to continue to evolve as I see that there's needs out there. So I'm here for it.
Oh, incredible, Blair. Like it's so incredible. Thank you so much for your time today, because I know that you're really, really busy and you got all these people that want to share their story and all these different opportunities. So I know your time is valuable. So thank you so much for being on the Caregiver Crisis podcast with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. What an honor.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to the Care Right podcast. We hope today's discussion has provided you with valuable insights. If so, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share our podcast with others who might find it helpful. Remember, Care Right is more than just a podcast. It's a community dedicated to supporting family caregivers with comprehensive care planning, crisis management, and resources for every stage of aging. Stay connected with us for future episodes as we continue to explore essential topics in aging planning, elder care, and financial planning. Until next time, take care, plan wisely, and remember, you're not alone in your caregiving journey.